Welcome back to the United Masterclass, a tactical podcast about Manchester United. I'm your host, Haider Rubbani, and I'm joined as ever by Rob Blanchette. Rob, United are making it a habit, aren't they, of winning games? They claimed a gutsy victory against West Ham, leapfrogging Chelsea into fifth with just 3 points behind Tottenham, who are in third, not too far behind City and Arsenal. Marcus Rashford with the match-winning goal, 100 goals now for Man United, an amazing achievement, the 21st player to do that. Disjointed, I'll be honest, the performance. There was actually a lot wrong. United couldn't keep the ball. There was a lack of control. But this is one of those performances which actually you can take a lot from. What United did and the players did, they showed immense fight, immense character. David De Gea with a masterclass, saved United at the end. I'm really, really happy with what I'm seeing. You can have the tactics, which we will talk about, but you also need the team spirit, which we haven't seen from these lads in a long, long time. So I'm delighted and I'm loving watching United again, and it's great to see the togetherness in this squad.
Yeah, well, obviously we're a tactical podcast, so we're going to break down all of the tactics from the match because it was quite a fascinating game when you looked at the way it unfolded. You know, it wasn't the greatest football match in the world, but you could kind of see how it swung one way and the other. But I think what was really interesting, as you just said there, and what we can't analyse here is the intangibles about Manchester United looking like they've grown a pair. Now, I'll put that very, in that way, because this is the issue I think we've had with United over their courage over the last 1, 2, 3, 4 years, like going back. Does this team really want to win football matches? Well, you won this game against West Ham because you wanted it. So that in itself is something we can't measure, but it's a feel-good factor, isn't it? So ironically, at the final whistle when we're walking out the stadium, we all felt so good, not just because we'd won the game, but how we'd won the game, that you'd got away with it, that your goalkeeper played a blinder, that you had to defend and you had to defend and you had to defend, and you win 1-0. And as I always say, 1-0 is always good enough. You don't need to win 2-0, 3-0, 10-0 every week. 1-0 gets you 3 points. So that was the most, I think, pleasing part of the overall kind of review of the performance. But we're going to kind of really kind of get into some dissection now, because I think we're starting to see, after, almost a dozen games plus going forward, we're seeing now what Ten Hag wants to do with this team tactically. And things are repeating themselves now week after week. So we can now kind of look at those things a little bit more forensically.
That's it. We're seeing the foundations. We're seeing, repetition. We're seeing the players understand their roles. We're seeing solid performances. And we're seeing what Ten Hag wants to do. I think that's the biggest thing, the identity. So, guys, today on the show, we will talk about the match summary briefly. We'll talk about 4-2-3-1 versus 4-1-2-3 because Ten Hag played with those two systems during the game. Fullback numbers, Shaw and Dalot, fantastic performances. Been really good this season, so we'll talk about them. We'll also talk about the forward metrics, so Rashford and Ronaldo, the two differences. We'll drill into the numbers as well, because I think there'll be some interesting findings from there. Then we will talk about Bruno Fernandes. I know Rob's got he's got a few things to say about positioning, his attitude. He caught a few things. I think a few others might have done as well. We'll talk about that right at the end of the show. But guys, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give us a follow at @MayNightMC. Give me a follow on @Haider_Rubbani, and give Rob a follow on @Rob_B. Let's go straight into it, Rob. As usual, the graphic from SofaScore, you can see Man United started with a 4-2-3-1. Surprising with the selection, actually. I wasn't too confident when I saw it. We saw Harry Maguire come in. We know that Rafa Varane's injured, which is a shame. Lindelof is ill. So Maguire comes in. You're having a look at the midfield. Eriksen and Casemiro playing in midfield. And then Elanga starting on the right-hand side. Again, a little bit of surprise. I wasn't expecting to see Garnacho. Had a really good game in the midweek, but wasn't expecting that. Sancho, obviously sitting on the bench. And then Cristiano Ronaldo up top. Again, I wasn't actually expecting him to start. So when I saw that side, I was a little bit, concerned, because I think there was a few things that I thought might play out. I think they did during the game. So what were your thoughts on the initial selection?
Yeah, well, obviously the first thing was that Anthony wasn't playing, wasn't it? So we kind of looked at that and thought, right, what's he going to do? So obviously Anthony was out, injured, not available. So Elanga came in. So this was, I think, the shape of the team. It was based around that, is that you had some pace on that right-hand side. Obviously, what trying to duplicate what Anthony does for you. But of course, Elanga is not as good as Anthony, is he? So I'm not quite sure whether Ronaldo would have started. I think Ronaldo started because of that change, in time to just make sure that you've got more potency in your attack. Pushed Rashford obviously to the left, kept Sancho on the bench. Not surprised that Sancho didn't play. Not surprised Garnacho didn't play. And when you look at this kind of shape, this kind of 4-2-3-1, this is all variations of 4-3-3. So what is this manager trying to do? It's exactly what he did at Ajax. Didn't play a defined 4-3-3. On the other side here, it says that West Ham played 4-2-3-1. Well, to the eye, they played 4-4-2. You know, when you're actually in the stadium and you can see them set up, and it's quite clear they played a 4-4-2. It's kind of a mid block, trying to hurt United moving the ball around, and it worked for large parts of the game. But Cristiano up top means that you can't press. That was something we'll talk about a little bit more today. And he switched between these systems of 4-2-3-1 and 4-1-2-3, which are very close to themselves. But we're going to kind of show you with the graphics a bit later on about the differences in those systems. But these are the two systems now that we're seeing in the Premier League constantly, going from one to the other, in games changing, starting games differently. And it's the core difference between possession football and pressing football. Those two things, you separate them with these two different formations. And you see with Ten Hag, in a match, when he goes from one to the other, you know exactly what he wants to do. So you don't need to read his mind. You don't need to know everything about football tactics. You just need to know that these are the two formations that he uses when he's trying to keep the ball or when he's trying to push up the pitch.
I think the positive thing, Rob, is that there's an identity. We talk about this a lot. There's solid identities, a solid foundations, a solid framework, and then they're interchangeable. And these players should be able to go from 4-2-3-1 to 4-1-2-3 to 4-2-3 all in the space of 90 minutes. It shouldn't be a problem. They should be able to rotate. They should be able to seamlessly slip in. The players should know their roles. So I think, we're only 12 games into the Premier League season and Ten Hag's reign. We're looking at 2-3 months in. So we are seeing those foundations. I think that's a positive thing. What I do want to quickly touch on is something that surprised me when I went to look back at the statistics. And Man United had more shots. Didn't really feel like that, did it? If you looked at that second half, second half was really poor. A lot of the comments here, Alan saying, the second half was scary. Ten Hag mentioned after the game, the ball retention was poor, some horrible passing at times. We did see that. But United did have 16 chances, 14 from open play. They're creating chances. The conversion is poor, 6%. They had, Ronaldo had 3 chances. We saw Fred with the chances. That has been one of United's problems, hasn't it? That killing the game when you're on top.
Just the attack is stagnant. So, you're looking at the conversion rate there. United 6% conversion rate. Obviously, West Ham 0 as they didn't score. But this, again, is a repeated problem, is that United are actually creating the chances. So your midfield's doing the work. You're finding the forwards, and the midfield itself is pushing up to help with that. To get shots and opportunities. You said Fred hit the post when he came on with a header. But I think when you kind of look at the stats, you look at kind of what you expect from Cristiano, is that you hear this mythology all the time, don't you? If Cristiano gets that chance, he scores. He isn't. No, he isn't, and he's not actually looking like he's going to score. A lot of these chances where he's in the box and the ball comes to him, he looks rushed. He looks confused sometimes.
Slow.
He's not the player that everyone remembers, and he just isn't. And it's difficult because he's trying to be the best version of himself. This is why I'm not here to slate Cristiano. I'm looking at the factual sides of the game. But the good thing is with United is that there are players in this midfield and the attack who are starting to thrive. Obviously, Marcus Rashford's one of them, and we hope Anthony Martial will be one when he comes back as well. But there's a balance here, isn't it? Because there's no doubt with United, again, when you look at the stats, the players suffering when they play together is Bruno and Ronaldo. But when you take Ronaldo out, Bruno gets better. So this is something that we'll have to discuss, I think, week to week and analyse it. But when you looked at the numbers there, West Ham, it felt like the Alamo in the second half. The game management from Manchester United was absolutely abysmal. Like, they got the ball. There would be like 5-on-3 in our kind of favour, and we'd give the ball away. And you'd be like, what are you doing? Just play the ball in the corner flag if you have to. Just go and work the game out. You know what I mean? But United couldn't do that. So I think Ten Hag would have been pulling his hair out like I was. And I think when you look at the game, you can't be happy about that part of it. But you can be happy that you won 1-0 and that you kept fighting to the final whistle.
Rob, we'll touch on Ronaldo in more detail because I have got a few things to say on that, but we'll talk. Yeah. We have got a segment, obviously, on Rashford and Ronaldo. I do want to talk about Maguire very briefly. because I felt like really deep into that second half when we were having to clear crosses coming in, he came into his element. He was very commanding. He was brilliant. I felt like in that first half, it might be rustiness, but this is why he doesn't start. You saw it twice, didn't you? Where West Ham broke. He's so inagile on that halfway line. He's just lucky he had Lissandro behind him, Martinez, to clean up. But we saw why, because of his lack of agility. He can't play in this system, in my opinion. And unfortunately, because I think he did have a very good second half in terms of, being, commanding his box, helping De Gea and all that sort of stuff. I thought he was very good. And there's some great headers, great defensive headers, great effort from that defense as a whole in that second half. But I felt like United lacked that control as well, because he was nervous on the ball. He's playing on that right-hand side of the defense. Obviously, he prefers left-hand side. But he made a couple of wayward passes forward. I didn't feel he was as progressive, on that right-hand side. I felt he was nervous. He was making me nervous. I tweeted during the game saying he's making me nervous. I don't know what it was like in the ground for you. So I feel like that performance didn't surprise me, because in key areas, you had players, in my opinion, that don't have a long-term future at the club, starting week in, week out. Ronaldo, I would say, I'm not going to say Elanga, because, he did what he had to do on that right-hand side. We know that he does lack a little bit of quality in the ball. But Maguire was the other one. There were two key positions, right at the top of the pitch and at the back of the pitch for Man United.
Yeah, I think the thing is with Maguire, and you said it there, and I think it's Maguire in a nutshell, is that he's like a forklift truck. He literally is just like to turn around and the ball's gone and the opposition are on you and the counter attack's flying and he's then chugging back. It's just way too late. Thankfully, West Ham, not particularly the greatest counter-attacking team in the world, not blessed with out-and-out pace through the centre. So I think we got away with that, and I think that kind of suited Maguire. I think, I just read there in the comments there, I thought Maguire was solid for the game. I thought he did okay. And when he needed to block shots, he managed to get blocks in. But you could see how rusty he was, so rusty. And I think that he will have a problem in this type of system because... And so we're going to talk a little bit more about systems in a minute, but it's about how the shape at the back is and what you do from the back. And in the first half, it was quite embarrassing. I'm sure everyone kind of remembered the keep ball between Martinez
and Maguire.
Oh, it was going like this, and it was literally in front of us, and we were like,
really deep as well.
What are they doing? What is this? So that was in the part of the game when United were playing possession football in a 4-2-3-1. So that was the possession side of it. Don't give the ball away at all costs. Keep the ball, keep the ball, keep the ball. So they did that. But it meant that you kind of had very little progression through that midfield. And it meant that Eriksen had to go for a little bit of a wander to try and find a bit more space. And Casemiro
dropped several times.
And Casemiro dropped. And I saw Casemiro wasn't particularly good on the ball in this game. He gave the ball away a lot. And also in the second half, gave away quite a few silly free kicks in the wrong side of the half, allowing West Ham obviously to be able to get forward very quickly. So not one of Casemiro's best games and not one of Eriksen's best games. I think the midfield did kind of fail in this game because they didn't keep the ball successfully. But I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about Harry Maguire because I think he's a footnote in this game. He needs to get more games under his belt. He needs to play more minutes and he needs to see if he can assimilate. One thing he cannot do, Haider, is run faster. He can't do it. He is a forklift truck. That's the way it's going to be. So what do forklift trucks do? They do heavy loading, don't they? So that's what you need to do with Maguire. You need to use him to be the guy at the back that maybe takes the weight off when you're sitting deeper and when you're playing maybe a lower block. But the point is, this manager's not going to play that kind of system. So jury's out on Harry Maguire. I know people want him gone, but he's at the football club. As long as you've got Rafael Varane as one of your starting centre-backs, you're going to need a backup. And if your backup is Harry Maguire or Victor Lindelof, we're not going to like it, but we're going to have to lump it because you need someone to do that job as it stands. So Maguire will definitely be at the football club until next season at the very, very least. Is he going to be a starter when everyone's fit? That's on him, isn't it? If he plays well in the next few games, or say he goes to the World Cup as a stormer, England win the World Cup, Harry Maguire's there with the trophy in Qatar. What are you going to say when he comes back? You can't play, So these realities could actually happen, even though they feel very far away and like mystical. So let's see with Harry Maguire. I think he's going to have time under this manager to prove himself. Because I think one thing that we have seen in the past is that Ten Hag does play with centre backs who are not particularly fast. He has done that. So could he do that with Harry
But
Maguire?
they're really good. They're really good at reading the game. They're really good at defending the space. And
But
that's what
supposedly
does
that's
so well.
supposedly what Maguire's good at. Supposedly, I know we don't see it, but every manager that's worked with him and players that work with him go, he's so good at reading the game, so good at playing out from the back. It's a bit like, is he? Well, that's what people are telling you. But Varane, the difference is, Haider, Varane's got recovery pace. Varane gives the ball away, he's going to run someone down. So that's important. Same with Martinez, isn't it? Is that he'll run that player down. Doesn't matter how tall he is, he's going to go and do that work. So let's see what happens with Harry Maguire.
Well, let's talk about these formations. Let's start with the 4-2-3-1 because that's what United started with.
Yeah.
So as you can see here, pretty straightforward. We saw Rashford coming in. We saw, Casemiro dropping back, Dalot inverted, Elanga working really hard on that right-hand side, holding the width. You had Luke Shaw, who was, not going forward as much, but he was getting involved in the build-up. Eriksen trying to make things happen. At times it was United did well. They fashioned chances. They did, they created chances, but it for me, it still wasn't right. I felt that maybe it's because we had 2 or 3 changes in the side, but I didn't think that United were as free flowing. And then we did see later on, we'll talk about it, but he did go, Ten Hag did go to the 4-1-2-3.
Yeah, so as I said, we talked a little bit at the start of the show about the difference between 4-2-3-1 and this being their possession system. It's not a lot of difference, is it? It's the difference of playing a number 6 and not playing a number 6 effectively. So here we got the double pivot, going back to a system that all United fans know really, really well. But of course, you're playing Eriksen in there, a bit more of a ball player, obviously than McFred. But you look at this kind of 4-2-3-1, and it's about where do you overload? Where do you keep the numbers? So you overload in the half spaces on the left and the right, and you kind of overload in the middle of the pitch. Martinez, Maguire, Eriksen, and Casemiro end up being like a box 4. There's 4 of them there, and they look after that bit of the pitch. They're saying to West Ham, if you want to get at us, you got to go down the channels. That's how you got to play. So nothing kind of groundbreaking about this, but this is, again, exactly what Ten Hag did at Ajax. This was a familiar system. He would kind of play with a full system, with a 9 dropping out. You would have wide players keeping really wide, holding that space, and then really fullbacks being more like wing backs. This is kind of where Luke Shaw comes into it a little bit more. Luke Shaw can do that, could do it really well. Dalot, we talk about as being a progressive fullback, not really showing that in his numbers, but is definitely defensively better than he ever was. Say 6 months ago. The big issue, the reason why I didn't want Dalot anywhere near the first team, he's just so defensively brittle, a real problem. That has gone away a little bit now, not nearly as kind of risky. And I think obviously Dalot is better with Varane inside him than he is with Maguire. So like you just said there, enforced changes, Elanga coming in, a bit more straight line speed. When you looked at Elanga's numbers actually after the game, they were pretty good. People got saying, I heard a lot of people going, oh, he's rubbish, he's this, he's that, the other. You look at his metrics, he didn't give the ball away a lot. He actually did the run in, and he was one of the few that was kind of pressing up that side.
That's really good, a really good part of his game, Rob.
So it's a good part of his game. But we do know that Elanga isn't Anthony. Anthony is a 80, 90 million pound Brazilian, and Elanga isn't. So this is the problem. I think United fans with expectations quite often go, oh, well, why is that not working this week? It's because it's a completely different footballer doing it. So Elanga's numbers, I think, on the day were acceptable. But I think also when he went off, that allowed United to switch systems to this next system that we're about to show you, which is 4-1-2-3. So this is something that we're seeing United do a lot of now. This system of playing what I call the modern number 6. So Casemiro kind of coming back in, doing all that work there in front of them.
You can only play that as well, Rob, because of Casemiro.
Only because you got Casemiro, and you could play it with someone else. You just won't play it as well. It's just as simple as that. So, like this is what they wanted to do with De Jong. So De Jong would have been the guy in front of Martinez, Maguire, picking the ball up here and being the Carrick. But you haven't, this is a different kind of style. What does this allow you to do? Well, this more 4-2-3-1, as I said before, ends up being more like a 4-1-5. Yes, this is what you do when you're pressing up the pitch. United switched to this after 60 minutes. Obviously, Elanga came off. There was a few changes. McTominay came into the team. It's quite weird seeing McTominay being like the driving number 8 in the side. Like that's what he was doing, getting the ball, passing it and driving forward. And you were like, whoa. But he likes doing that. And we know he's actually all right at doing that, getting towards the edge of the box. The big problem with this system, and I think this is why United didn't start with this system, is the bloke at the very, very top. Now, you see the arrows I've put in there. They're kind of quite loose, but this is kind of what I could see at Old Trafford from my seat. You can see Rashford, McTominay, even Eriksen to a point, and Casemiro coming when there's actually space forward, all moving forward. But there's only one guy kind of going backwards. There's your number 9. Cristiano dropping out way too often, just what I call abdicating the area. You know, I want Cristiano playing on the last man, but he realizes that if he plays on the last man, he's probably going to get caught offside a lot. So what does he do? He just drops 20, 30 meters. And you think, now we've got no one to pass to. Like there's no runner through there. There's no third man runner. There's no striker. So the system worked for about 10 minutes and then West Ham worked it out. West Ham went, they're pressing us. So we're going to counter press. And then when we get the ball in midfield, we're going to do the numbers game. And that's really how the game panned out as West Ham got those opportunities because they were outnumbering United. It made life difficult for Casemiro. Shaw and Dalot had to be more defensive. And that's, of course, where Maguire then gets exposed, isn't it? Because he's not quick. So that was kind of game of two halves. But this is the system that we are seeing more from Man United now when they want to press. And I think we're going to see this a lot. But it won't be with Ronaldo at the very top end of the pitch. If you can imagine this, with either, say, Rashford at the top or Martial at the very top or a brand new striker, you know, when the transfer window's open, so Osimhen or someone like that of that caliber, you could put through the middle. And then you could bring Sancho like back to the team over on the left. You'd have Anthony in there and Bruno would come central again, wouldn't he? So all of those bits is just moving the pieces around to see if you can do it. The truth is, this didn't really work on the day because you just couldn't pass the ball through. McTominay, Bruno, Ronaldo all couldn't keep the ball if they tried. And then you took Eriksen off to try and shore it up to have a little bit more energy because he didn't have a good game. And United just gave the ball away so much over and over again. It was so frustrating to watch. But we are seeing a philosophy at least. This is something that you can work towards. And you can see that the players are drilled in it. They're doing it pretty well off the ball. So off the ball, the system's working. On the ball, it's not working because some of these players have got 2 left feet.
Rob, it's positive, as you mentioned, we're seeing a pattern. So remember the Everton game. I like to say this is a 3-1-6 build-up formation, right? You have Martinez, Casemiro, let's say Varane or Maguire, and then you have all the other players pushing up. You have Shaw providing width. You know, Dalot can come inside, but, you know, sometimes he'll push out wide as well. The wide players will stay wide. You have Eriksen and, let's say, Bruno operating in, you know, the sort of the half spaces, and then whoever plays number 9. Usually we've seen Martial or Rashford play, and I think they do it better, don't they? Like you said, they play on that last man. But I think the biggest positive thing is that you know that if United have to now break down the side that are going to sit a little bit deeper, maybe playing the mid block, the players seem like they've been coached to be like, right, okay, this is what we got to do. Move the ball quickly, obviously movement. They switch it, overload. So that's the biggest positive thing for me. We've seen over the last, let's say, we saw it under Oli as well, where whenever a team would sit deep against United, oh God, it'd be such a struggle to break them down. You know, once they took out the opportunity for United to counterattack on the side. So I think this is a positive thing about what Ten Hag's done when he's come in, is that we seem to understand that, right, if a team sits deep, we'll press them up higher up as well, so that we win the ball back higher, and we'll overload those wide areas. So I'm really happy with what I'm seeing so far, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm happy with it as well. And as I said, I think one of United's big downfalls over a long period of time has been off ball. So what do you do off the ball? You know, it's as important as being on the ball sometimes. You know, you have to have a shape and a function and a plan. Ironically here, you know, McFred ended up on the pitch, didn't they, in a kind of latter stages of the game as 2 number 8s. So this whole kind of thing of worried about them being deep as a double pivot of 4-2-3-1 kind of gets mitigated by that. You let Casemiro go and do that worrying. And Casemiro, as I said, not his best game for me. You know, I think, you know, some incessant fouling in the second half around the halfway line when he didn't need to. It did feel like the referee was on his back quite a bit. You know, every time he touched the ball, he seemed to blow a whistle and kind of have a go at Casemiro and say, no, it's a foul. But having Fred and McTominay further forward when you're trying to press and push the game further away from your goal is a good tactic. But the problem is that once it gets through all of that lot, that you're kind of exposed, aren't you? And this is what happened with West Ham. And if you don't have David De Gea being peak De Gea, you know, 5-time player of the season, David De Gea, in the week where he's just got left out of the World Cup squad for Spain, I think you've got a guy there who's obviously trying to prove himself for a new contract because his contract's coming up. And he's trying to show that, yeah, I'm not the greatest on the floor. It's a problem, isn't it? Passing the ball, but I'm getting better at it. But to tell you what, I'm going to save you when you need it. And it was quite interesting to hear the manager speak about De Gea afterwards and explain how amazing he thinks De Gea is. It wasn't someone that he doesn't like or, he messes my system up from the back. He was like, David De Gea is an amazing goalkeeper and I love him. And he's a senior player. And, I'm into David De Gea. It's quite clear. So is there a chance for De Gea to stay at the football club? Possibly. But I do think that De Gea still has way too many deficiencies to say that he's your long-term number one.
Well, Reb, let's talk about it. Let's talk about David De Gea because we've got a graphic here up on the screen. You could see the numbers. We'll go through some of them in a second. But, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that his numbers are poor. Very, very poor compared to other goalkeepers in Europe, across the top 5 leagues.
This is Premier League. This is just across the Premier League.
Across the Premier League. Okay, so they're still bad numbers. You can see also the heat map against West Ham. He's very rarely leaving his box. He did actually sweep, and he has added that to his game this season. So, if you ask me, David De Gea, should he get a new contract? It's a tough one for me because I think United need a new keeper. And I think that they need a more ball-playing keeper, more modern keeper, in my opinion. But I have seen improvements in David De Gea this season. He's coming off his line a lot more to sweep. He looks like he has improved his passing. He's still not great at it, but he has got better. We're seeing, obviously, De Gea Masterclass title this show. He was fantastic yesterday with some of his saves. But when you look at the underlying metrics, the eye test is matching up with that. We're seeing here in terms of, his save percentage isn't particularly high as well, 30th percentile. Touches, 30th percentile. So he's not really, getting involved in the build-up. I'd like to actually see what that is like compared to someone like Alisson or Ederson. And, clean sheets, he's doing well this season. Crosses stopped, 5th percentile. Defensive actions outside the penalty area, 30th percentile. That's definitely improved from last season. I remember seeing something. He was below the 10th percentile for that. He's getting out of his box. He is actually sweeping. He's clearing into touch. And his average distance of defensive actions as well as 48th percentile. So he has improved in that area. But that's still a long way back. It is inhibiting United's ability to be able to play out from the back and completely dominate. Because we've seen in a couple of games, Chelsea was one of them, after Kovacic came on. We saw him launching the ball forward. You saw against Arsenal. That's a 50-50 ball then. Then United have to win the second ball. If they don't win that, that immediately puts United back under pressure. They have to get back into defensive shape. So when we look at David De Gea, I think people misconstrue it. He's a good goalkeeper. He's a very good goalkeeper in terms of reflexes and saves. But if United want to totally dominate in every single phase, they have to have a keeper that allows them to build out from the back and be comfortable doing that, to have sustained pressure. The best sides in the Premier League, the best sides in Europe, right now the two best sides are Arsenal and Man City. Their goalkeepers are competent, very good on the ball, and they allow Arsenal and Manchester City to have sustained pressure because even if it goes back to the keeper, they're able to pass it out, start attacks again. And that's what a modern football team has to do. And that's why David De Gea has to be replaced as the number one. If he's happy to sit on the bench, and he takes a wage cut, I'm happy to see him stay because he's been fantastic over this decade. But if he's not happy to do that, it's time to go, unfortunately. And I hate saying that because he's been that one player, hasn't he, since Sir Alex, that's actually earned that wage. We had a couple of seasons without David De Gea, we thought where we would be. But United have to push sentiment to one side. They need a modern goalkeeper. We'll talk about one as well to compare with De Gea. And I think maybe time is up for him now.
Yeah, I once wrote that for me, my life as a Manchester United fan, that the best goalkeeper I've ever seen at Manchester United in all those years was David De Gea. And I was lucky enough to see Peter Schmeichel in the flesh many, many times. So people are a bit like, well, you're mad, aren't you? Because Schmeichel's better. No, I think De Gea
over the as well, Rob.
I think better than Van der Sar. So those three are the three goalkeepers, aren't they? Of course, over the past X amount of years. And at the very best, they were world class and best in class of what they did. But for me, David De Gea, so many games I've seen him save United in a way that Peter Schmeichel never really did. So for me, David De Gea will always have that kind of status, that legendary status. Two things. these metrics absolutely stink to high heaven. You know, if you looked at this and it was at another football club for another goalkeeper, you'd be like, what are they doing? So that's a problem, first of all. David De Gea, you know, as I said, he got you the points against West Ham, but David De Gea is finished at the very top level for us, definitely. You know, if you want to win stuff and you want to be in the top 1 or 2 or 3 and you're going that way, David De Gea, unfortunately, isn't the guy who you can keep around. Look at the metrics. The metrics tell you everything. They match the eye test. As you said there, definitely better on the ground this year, passing. But look at some of the rest of this. Crosses stopped, bottom 5th percentile. Touches 30th. So it shows he doesn't really touch the ball a lot anyway. Even saves, you know, like not great save percentage for a goalkeeper, you know. But the one thing this year, so these metrics are based on 1,000 minutes of football that he's played this year in the Premier League. And I broke it down like that deliberately because no point looking at last year or the last 10 years. All that's rubbish. It's now. Now is what matters. You look at kind of some of these numbers in the current day. The most impressive one there, of course, is clean sheets. So 82nd percentile. So he's right up there. So he'll be saying to his manager, well, look what I'm doing. Man United at the moment only conceded 1 goal in the last 6 in all competitions. David De Gea has played all those games. David De Gea is feeling pretty good about himself for the right reasons. But I think overall, if you want to be a modern football team, you need a player at the back that can help those centre-backs. You know, we just talked about Maguire and Martinez passing the ball backwards and forwards to each other yesterday. Do you know why that was? It's because they didn't have a goalkeeper behind them they could do it with. If there's 3 of them, they play out from the back, the strikers get overloaded, there's nowhere to go, and those 3 just pass round.
Yeah,
that's what Liverpool do. That's what City do. 1 extra man there means everything, but De Gea can't do that. So De Gea is definitely playing outside his box more this year and starting out there, but he's never going to be that guy, that cat that gets off his line quickly and, you know, makes that clearance or makes that amazing pass. It's just never going to happen. And I think of a player, Haider's on £375,000 a week, and I think he was worth that contract when he got that contract. I think now you need to get that contract off your books. So you need a goalkeeper on less money, and you need to invest some of those wages in other parts of the pitch.
Absolutely spot on. And when I look at what's the standard, Rob? I think the best goalkeeper in the world right now is Alisson. I think he's when you look, he's saving saving Liverpool at the minute. Obviously, he's been very good at his saves and shot stopping, but he's just absolutely world class at his distribution, world class with the ball at his feet. He collects off his line as well. So that's what United need to be going for. And when you look at Pep Guardiola making a big decision, obviously he got rid of Joe Hart, went for Bravo, and then a year later got Ederson. Arsenal with Ramsdale, you know, Leno seemed to be the number 1 there. Arteta comes in, makes that change. We see that as well with Liverpool as well. We saw Karius and Alisson. It's so crucial nowadays that you have a goalkeeper that allows you to play out from the back and to be able to do those things that a modern goalkeeper needs to be able to do. So when you're having a look at it, this could be the turning point for Manchester United, I think, in terms of settling the centre-backs down as well, allowing us to keep the ball better in those dying embers of the game as well, because you know that, you know, your goalkeeper can do that. So there's a lot to sort of digest with David De Gea, because there are improvements this season, but we also have to look at where United are going, where Ten Hag wants to go, and I think United need to then now move away. And I'm going to bring up the keeper that we've been very heavily linked with, Diogo Costa from Porto, fantastic goalkeeper. I'm going to throw out a stat that I know that you didn't want me to, or didn't like me throwing out, saying he saved 18 penalties. You know, you're not that interested in that, but that's still incredible in the last year, 18 penalties. The comment here from Alan saying, I know penalties are a coin toss, but given his reactions, I'm amazed De Gea isn't better at saving them. Every time De Gea has a penalty, we saw against Jorginho at the Chelsea game, I didn't think he was going to save it. You know, I think saved maybe 2 or 3 in the last 6, 7, 8 years. Not good enough. We know the final of the Europa League, so that's a bonus. But just looking here on the screen at some of his, you know, his metrics. I mean, look, his save percentage is clean sheet percentage is very, very good, 78th percentile. His touch is 88th. That was a key one for me when having a look at this. Crosses stopped as well, 78th percentile. So he's getting off his line as well. And you're looking as well at goals against. Porto have been very, very good. You know, he's a very good goalkeeper. He's 23 years old, I believe, as well. He's got a release clause of 60 million. United almost have a free run. You look across Europe at all the other top clubs; they seem to have their goalkeepers locked in. So it's actually an obvious transfer from Manchester United with potential huge returns because he could be the goalkeeper for 5, 6, 7 years. When I'm having a look at this and I'm looking at the hierarchy of who United should be bringing in, where they need to improve, goalkeeper is actually very, very high for me. Strikers now emerge as a position. I thought, a progressive midfielder was the most important one. I think that's actually dropped down maybe to number 3 on the list. I think it goes striker, goalkeeper, progressive midfielder, right back. But all in all, if United can bring in someone like Diogo Costa or someone of that caliber who has those characteristics of Alisson and Ederson, that will go a huge way into helping Ten Hag implement the system.
Definitely. And like these metrics are the opposite of De Gea's metrics. So this is based on the Portuguese league. So it's based on nearly, again, another 1,000 minutes. It's very similar to De Gea. And when you kind of look at this stuff, the most obviously the one that jumps out there is touches. So this is a guy that's involved. He's always involved. And I always think that goalkeepers now in modern game, they're involved in all phases of play. So this is not about playing out from the back. This is about everything. How do you get going quickly? How do you take advantage maybe of a long pass? You see that with Ederson all the time, don't you? He picks the ball up and he looks like Michael Carrick and kind of plumps it into the channel and someone runs on and then gives it to Haaland and Haaland scores. And you think, oh God, here we go. So United need a goalkeeper that can do that. Interesting here, like as I said to you, I think off camera and I've said before, green doesn't always mean good and red doesn't always mean bad, right? So average length of goal kicks. So he's in the bottom 30 of percent. Why is that? It's because he can pass the ball. He doesn't need to go long. He just plays it 15, 20 yards accurately 1,000 times. So that's what you want De Gea to do, isn't it? But De Gea can't do that, not consistently. Could do it sometimes, just can't do it all the time, especially against teams that press. Makes it very hard for David De Gea. But I think Costa's the obvious one here. There are plenty of good goalkeepers in Europe, plenty of good goalkeepers in the Premier League. So Costa's not the only guy out there. But I do think Costa's the guy whose stock is at the very highest at the moment. If you could get a player like him for 60 million, you're laughing. That's what you want. You want a goalkeeper. You just said he's 23. He's 6'3", Haider. He plays like he's 5'8". That's what you want. You want someone who's comfortable on the deck and can do all of that stuff, can come for crosses and be the big man, but ultimately is just like a ball player from the back area, like a sweeper keeper, as we call them now, isn't it? So I think all his metrics are great, but also the eye test, like you said, 18 penalties. That is cool. That is a really good stat to have to be a penalty specialist. But it is a coin toss to me. Like, he might have the next 50 penalties. They might all go in the back of the net and we'll go, is he rubbish at penalties now? Well, no, it's just because someone took them better. It's just the way it goes. The goalkeeper's always disadvantaged against a striker who's taking the penalty. But the difference is your footwork. So I think someone like Costa's footwork is so much superior to, say, like De Gea, who's on his line but can't come off his line anymore because you get called for it. Whereas maybe in years gone by, you didn't get called for it. Someone like Costa can dance on the line and put players off for penalties. But just a really, really good goalkeeper. We put him in here because it's important that De Gea was, for me, the man of the match, undoubtedly. I think he saves you in the game. But I do think the days of David De Gea are coming to an end.
Let's move on, Rob, to the fullbacks, because I think this has been a huge cornerstone of why Manchester United have been able to put a good run together, why Ten Hag's been able to, implement his system, his principles, and I think the fullbacks are so key. And if you're watching this or listening to this, on Spotify, Rob has his Shawberto cup up on screen. He loves it so much. But listen, Luke Shaw started the season. I mean, look, he was in the category of Harry Maguire, right? He wasn't playing. He was sitting on the bench. People were saying to sell him. Malacia came in. But Malacia's aggression, his tenacity, his willingness to defend on the front foot, meet the opposition winger high up to try and win the ball was fantastic. We saw that in the Liverpool game. I absolutely love Malacia. I think it's great to have an option like him. He's still young, though. We didn't see enough of his progressiveness, his ability to go forward, his passing. Unfortunately, but I think that was a lot to do with the way that Ten Hag had set up. Dalot was doing more of the progressive activities on that right hand side. Luke Shaw's come back in, and I said this to you off air, and I'm going to say this again. We know how good Luke Shaw was pre-injury. The horrific injury under Louis van Gaal. He was amazing, still very, very young. We also saw him leading up to Euros. He was the best fullback probably in Europe at the time, scored in the European final. Again, had a great season under Oli. But I think this is the most complete and the best I've ever seen Luke Shaw. And this is without the goals. He's got couple of assists. Because for me, technically, he's been so sound. He's great on the ball. He looks like he's got so much time. He's a great passer. We know he's a great progressive passer. You can see that up on the screen there. 76 percentile. He's always been a progressive monster, to be honest, for Manchester United, and that was very key for Ollie's system. We know he's a good passer of the ball. But what's really, really impressed me at this point in his career and what we're seeing right now is that he's really aggressive. And that's what we haven't seen defensively. He's got much better. He's almost knocking people out of the way as well. It looks like, what we're seeing with Martinez has rubbed off on him. And he just looks like he's got more time than any other fullback on the pitch. He's top class. And right now, the way he's playing, he's world class. A lot of people say, Luke Shaw, he only plays well when he has competition. Maybe. But the way he's playing right now, he's elevated, the side since he's come back in. And I mean, Ten Hag has done a great job with him. And I'm really excited to see what else he can do, because I think when we look at his talent, this is a player that we bought years and years ago, didn't we, at Southampton? We spent 30 million on an 18-year-old to come in and become that left fullback for Man United for years and years. He's been up and down, had a horrible injury, but he is looking like an absolutely top quality left fullback right now. And yeah, hopefully he can add a couple of goals to his game as well. But he's a great player and he's playing really, really well.
Yeah, he is, and this is why when Malacia was having his run, and obviously Shaw was out the team with illness and with injury. The kind of, again, the knee-jerk rubbish of sell Shaw. Oh, this English tax, if it's an English player, they get more time and all this. It's not true. None of it's true. The manager doesn't care what nationality a player is. He just wants to look at metrics and he wants to see performances. So here's Luke Shaw's metrics since he came back into the team. 629 minutes. Versus all the other fullbacks in the Premier League. This is what these stats are. And you can totally see that he's just doing it. Yeah. So he's up there right at the top end for things like assists, shot creating actions, which is massive on that side of the pitch on the left, passes attempted, passes completed, progressive passes, interceptions, blocks, aerials, one, which is something you wouldn't normally kind of go with Luke Shaw in terms of he's not the biggest player, but it shows that he can do all the physical work, but he can do all the technical work. So as far as comparing him to Malacia, he's just a better footballer than Malacia in all fundamental parts of the game on the left-hand side. Malacia, I think it's going to be good to be on the bench this year, both as backup, as left back and right back, not necessarily as a starter unless you get injuries. But this is the Luke Shaw from 12 months ago. I kind of agree with you what you were saying there. I think this is probably the best version of Luke Shaw we've ever seen. But I think that's actually something to do with the tactics. The tactics are better. So Luke Shaw looks better. Players look better with better tactics. Varane looked rubbish last year, didn't he? This year, Varane looks pretty good. So I think that all of those things do mix and match. And I think with Luke Shaw, I've always got patience with him because, when I did see him as a kid, when he was like 17, 18 at Southampton, he was otherworldly. He was kind of top-rated 18-year-old in the world in all positions. Was very happy when Man United got hold of him and signed him. And I think it's something you have to be patient with. He's getting now to the point where he's no longer a kid, in his mid to late 20s. But you're hoping now that if he can avoid injury, that you're going to get the best version of Luke Shaw for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And that means, Haider, at least you've got one position you're not worried about. Man United, there's always multiple positions to think about. But if you've got a left back and say someone like Malacia who can be a very able deputy and you cannot worry about your fullback position, then that's a big weight taken off the manager's mind.
Rob, just a quick question. I know this is not really United related, but it is related to England. We're both England fans. Alan's asking, thoughts on which United players make the England squad? I think Shaw starts, Maguire and Rashford make the squad, but maybe bench players, Sancho, zero chance. I think Luke Shaw starts. I would start Marcus Rashford off that left-hand side over someone like Sterling, who's and Grealish. I think Marcus has probably been the best left-hand side player probably in the Premier League, and we will talk about him a little bit later. I would bench Maguire, but Maguire's going to start because he'll play in that back three, and that's where he excels. But this is why when you said earlier, I know you said earlier about Maguire that I know you're sort of tongue in cheek, but if he goes and wins the World Cup and etc., he expects to come back. Like, it's just not comparable. But I know you were joking and you were kind of making a point. But I think Maguire will start. I think Sancho will start. I think Rashford should start as well. Sorry, not Sancho. Sorry, no. I mean Luke Shaw, not Sancho. Sancho won't make the cut, I don't think. So that's it, really. 3 players, and I think they're 3 players that Southgate does trust, and I think they're players that could have good tournaments as well.
They're all Southgate boys, so I think they'll go. It would be horrendous if Rashford didn't go. When you look at the players who are kind of in and out of the squad, of course, there's been now a big question mark over Saka. So you need someone who can kind of play in wider areas and also play up top. So I think Rashford's form will dictate that he's in the squad. Luke Shaw will be the starting left back. And I said this before, Harry Maguire doesn't need to play a minute of football at Man United for him to be the starter for England.
So true. Yeah.
But England haven't really got a lot of options at centre back. So, like, if you want to play Connor Cody, great. But I don't want to play Connor Cody. So it's going to be Harry Maguire. So I think when you kind of look at the England squad, United haven't got loads of players. Jadon Sancho, unfortunately for us at Manchester United, is not in any kind of form. He's in the worst form, I think, since he's been at the club. I was saying this actually on the game on Sunday, that he was ill about 5 weeks ago. He had illness, kind of COVID-related symptoms, but not COVID, but something similar. From that 5-6 weeks ago when he was ill, he hasn't looked the same. So take of that what you will. Whereas he started the season, he was on fire. He looked really good.
Start. Really good.
Yeah,
well.
he looked buoyant. He looked good. And I think the thing is with Ten Hag is that he's just managing Jadon in the correct way now. So it's like, I'll manage your minutes. I'll sit you on the bench, but unfortunately, you're not going to be able to go out there and prove yourself for the England squad. I'm sure Jadon Sancho would love to do that. But if you're hurting Man United in any way, shape, or form, you've got to go sit on the bench. That's just the way it is. So Jadon won't go to the World Cup. And do you know what, Haider? I keep saying this. I'm quite happy if none of our players go to the World Cup. I'm not interested if any of our players go to the World Cup and win it. Really not interested. And there's always bragging rights around that. I'm looking at Rafa Varane and I'm thinking, maybe better if you have the World Cup off, mate. But of course, Varane will want to go and play in the World Cup. So you just saw with Paul Pogba, it's been announced today that Paul Pogba won't be going to the World Cup because he's injured. And thankfully, he's not at Manchester United. So we're not having to have that conversation because it would be the biggest talking point, wouldn't it, that Pogba's knee hasn't held up again. And now he's not going to the World Cup and he's distraught about that. So United players, obviously a lot of the players will be going anyway because they're internationals, but I just hope that their World Cup minutes are restricted or they come back at least healthy because we hit the ground running. As soon as the World Cup finishes, we got a game on the 27th of December straight away. There's no rest time for these players. We need to get them back at United and playing for us.
Unfortunately, I think the case is that United have a lot of players that will play in the World Cup. Fred and Casemiro will both start.
Yeah.
You have a look at them. Dalot will start. Ronaldo will play as well.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus most likely. Shaw, Maguire. I know Maguire puts on the bench. Rafa will start with plays. Martinez is definitely going to start. So that's United.
Bruno will start.
Yeah,
Eriksen will start.
De Gea's sitting at home. Obviously, he isn't making the squad. His ball playing abilities. Luis Enrique is not a fan, but that's literally United's whole starting 11. And then you have a look at the bench as well. If Martial makes it, if he's fit, and there's a few other players. Maybe Garnacho might make the squad as well. Van der Beek. So yeah, United got a lot of players going. So it's going to be an interesting one to see. Hopefully, no injuries.
United will be doing warm weather training all the way through the World Cup. So the players that don't go will be still on duty with the club and they will be touring. I believe that a game today has been announced against Cadiz for I think the 7th of December. So United are going to keep the kettle boiling. So Ten Hag and the lads are not having a rest. So Jadon Sancho will be playing football. It's just that he might not be playing it in Qatar. He might be playing it in Cadiz for Man United.
Let's move on, Rob, now to Diogo Dalot as well.
Mm-hmm.
The other fullback who's had fantastic numbers this season. There was always a little bit of a doubt around Dalot, especially you. I think, I was more of a fan of Dalot than you, but I also did appreciate that, on the back foot, that was a massive area of his game where he was weak. Having a look at the statistics here up on screen from FBref, you can see here total shots compared to other fullbacks in the Premier League. He's in the 87th percentile. So we've seen that a lot, haven't we? We've seen he's got quite a wicked shot on him. We've seen that in terms of assists, he's in the 64th percentile. Passes attempted as well. The surprising one was progressive passes. On the eye, we look at Dalot and he's very, very progressive. But actually, we've seen that more from Luke Shaw. I think that changed since Malacia has come out and Shaw has come in. I think we've seen that Dalot's duties, let's say, to be the more progressive one has actually decreased. But he is playing inverted. He is offering, a lot of attacking threat going forward. Touches, as you can see in the attacking penalty area, he's in the 84th percentile, so he's getting forward. And we've seen he's got a good eye for goal. Interceptions, fantastic, 79th percentile. Aerial duels won as well. He made 3 or 4 key headers, didn't he, in that West Ham game?
Did.
So good. I said to you off air, if that was Wan-Bissaka, United would have lost 3 or 4-1. Obviously, let's forget about Wan-Bissaka. But just from your perspective on Dalot, because I know that you've been a doubter of Dalot, United are looking for another right back. Ten Hag said this after the game, we need two good fullbacks on each side. He's got down the
Yeah.
left-hand side. He knows on the right-hand side. We know that Jeremy Frimpong from, I believe, Bayer Leverkusen, I think,
Yeah.
has been linked. I can't say I've seen a lot of him, but I've heard, going forward, and maybe that's another masterclass show that we can do. We can get some a Bundesliga expert on to discuss that. But apparently, going forward, he's fantastic. He's very progressive. He's got good attacking returns. Defensively, it might be an issue, but we've seen that Ten Hag can improve Dalot, so there's no reason why he can't find someone with great attributes and then improve that side of the game as well.
Could he do it with Wan-Bissaka? Save you a lot of money, wouldn't it? So, again, I think the thing is, we have faith in some players and faith, no faith in other players. And there are reasons for that, how we feel about it, what we see. And I think with Dalot, the jury still for me is out. These metrics here are really, really good. They're really consistent. They're really strong. It's done over 1,000 minutes of Premier League football. So I want to see this after 2,000 minutes. That's kind of how I look at this. Can he maintain this kind of form? Defensively, it's night and day. He's so much better defensively than he was 6 months, 12 months ago. Where I think 12 months ago, he was every bit as bad as Wan-Bissaka at the back post. And you saw against West Ham, there were 2 or 3 times we got under the ball and got really good contact on the ball at the back post. He was timing it. It was really, and that's one of West Ham's strengths in their 4-4-2, is that they can overload the back post and kind of expose one of the fullbacks, and the fullbacks isn't doing it. I think what you see here, and this is why I mentioned Wan-Bissaka. We won't talk too much about him because obviously not played this year. But there is definitely, when you look at what Wan-Bissaka's strengths and weaknesses are, he could give you balanced metrics like we're seeing here. So as you said there, there's nothing hugely progressive about what Dalot's doing here. But what Dalot's doing is not allowing it go this way as well. So he's like, I'm coming inwards. So I think that's the difference with the two players. Dalot can do the Cancelo role, come narrow, invert, and be a ball player in there. So we look at the stats here. Where does it kind of show it? Things like interceptions and that area of the pitch. He's helping the midfield and intercepting the ball, counter-pressing. That's why he comes in there. The question is, could someone like Wan-Bissaka do that? Jury's out. We don't know. Until we actually see it, we would not know that. We have to actually see it. But you heard what the manager said, and you just quoted him there. And he did say, he went, I need 2 good right backs. So it kind of tells you what he thinks about Wan-Bissaka. However, if Dalot goes and breaks his leg at a World Cup, guess who's going to be a starting right back? So I think kind of when you look at this with Malacia playing on the right-hand side as well, and you look at Wan-Bissaka, there's opportunities for those two there as well. But Dalot has made this position his own. Congratulations to him. And we want to see more now. I want to see him getting more assists. He's not bad at it, is he? But I want to see him getting more progressive. And dare I say it, more Cancelo. Cancelo's the best in the world at it. And, absolutely fabulous player. But I think Dalot can just give you a little bit, tiny bit more. But his form is fantastic at the moment. He's really done well in the last few months.
Absolutely. And it's a sign to the rest of the squad, Rob. Dalot's been at Man United for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, came under Jose Mourinho. Jose spoke very, very highly of him. Oli came in, didn't want anything to do with him. Sent out on loan to Milan as well. Didn't do great there. Didn't really pull up trees. Ten Hag comes in, gets his head down, works hard. I really like. He's showing a lot of leadership qualities. I'm really liking his attitude. He's a fantastic addition. It's almost like a new signing. I hate that term, but he almost is, because he's hardly played when he was here before. So he is young, but I feel like almost he missed out on some crucial development, in terms of the last 2 seasons. He hasn't played regularly week in, week out. So he's almost learning these. It's like he's almost 2 years behind where he should actually be. This is kind of how I see it with him. And there's a lot of players that are in that situation. They come in, they're really highly rated. They don't have a great 2 years or so. They go out on loan, unsuccessful loans. They come back in. So I think, I'm happy to be patient and see what happens. But, he does need a right back, maybe someone like Frimpong or something to come in.
You said that Frimpong. Frimpong is really good going forward, and really bad backwards. Yeah. So it's one of those things. But we've not mentioned Ethan Laird. So let's see what happens in terms of his development at the football club.
Been very good at QPR apparently. A lot of QPR fans are raving about him.
There we go. Tuanzebe's coming back into fitness now, so he might get used on the right-hand side. And of course, I think the big sign in there, depends on how you want to kind of look at it, is Timber. So you could bring Timber in at the end of the season because you've decided right back is important and you want someone that can invert and play central. And Timber would probably be the best in Europe at that. He'll be able to come into central midfield and be strong as an ox in there, but not give the ball away and do all the things that you want Dalot to do. So that's the balancing point, I think, for Ten Hag, is that he won't feel stressed that he needs to go and buy a fullback tomorrow. But he has made it clear that that's one of the positions he'll be looking at. And we all know that right back has been a weakness for Man United for many years.
Yeah, good point on Timber, actually. When I've seen him play, I cannot see personally. I can't see a scenario where Ten Hag goes, "I'll have Timber and Martinez as my two centre backs." You got 5'8", 5'9" centre backs in the Premier League. No one's ever done it before. Is there a manager that can make it happen? Maybe Ten Hag could, but I always look at Timber and I think his decision making is so good at such a young age. He always picks the right decision. He's so good on the ball. He's so good at reading the game that he could even slot into midfield. Yeah. Or as a right back. I always felt like those were the two positions based on height. But then we thought the same with Martinez, right? As soon as he came in, first 2 games, get him into that midfield position. But we've got a midfielder playing at centre back, playing those beautiful line breaking passes, threading the ball into the midfield, and it's just changed the way United plays. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think that United will have a new right back coming in, and hopefully Dalot can take his game to the next level again. Let's talk about the forwards, Rob, the forward metrics. We'll start with Marcus Rashford. Massive congratulations. He's 100 goals for Man United, the 21st player to do that. It's no mean feat, It's such a big achievement. He's had a fantastic season. There was a question earlier from Morton, I believe, asking, or it might have been Alan asking, which player do you think is the most improved under Ten Hag? People were saying Dalot. I think it's Marcus Rashford for me, to be honest, considering where he was last season. There's a big... I think a lot of people that do say negative things about Marcus Rashford are people that like Ronaldo. You're saying, Ronaldo would have scored this, would have scored that. Marcus Rashford, for some reason, seems to get a lot of hate. He had 2 amazing seasons under Ole. You're looking at 30-plus goals and assists. Completely overlooked. Broke his back. Really, really struggled. Awful under Ranić, to be honest with you. Not many players were great under him. But the way he's come back this season has been fantastic. You just look at some of his metrics as well. Progressive passes, 90th percentile. Dribbles complete, 94th percentile, amongst the best in Europe. He's scoring goals. Amazing header, almost Ronaldo-esque, that header against West Ham to win the game. He is looking like the Marcus of old, and he looks happy again. He's enjoying his football. He's a fantastic human being. We've seen what he's done off the pitch. We're really lucky to have him at the club. I really do believe that. And I'm loving what I'm seeing him under Ten Hag. And it's obvious that he's got the trust of his manager. I think that's maybe what he needed, right? After the injuries, and then we saw Ranić come in. These little things, these intangibles, I think people forget as players are human beings. Sometimes they need an arm around the shoulder, that environment, that trust, the manager to turn around and say, I believe in you. These are little things that we maybe overlook as fans. We're all guilty of that. I'm the same as well. So from what I've seen from Marcus Rashford, I'm really happy with what I've seen. And having a look at these metrics, you can see why he's been starting as a number 9 for Man United over, let's say, Ronaldo.
Well, the metrics are fantastic this season. So again, this is over nearly 1,000 minutes. And he's really come back into form. He was talking after the game and he was really honest. And he didn't talk directly about his mental health, but he did say, he said last season, there was a problem with my motivation. He was like, I was finding it hard to do stuff. Just wasn't doing it. And you could see it. Like, we would watch games. He'd be like 20 yards in front of us. And we'd be like, he looks like a ghost. It's not Marcus Rashford. That's someone else. Couldn't run the line. Couldn't give you anything. This year, he's doing that. I think last year, a lot of that was a transition around United. So he was one of Ole's boys. Ole had a big faith in him. Ole gets the sack. You bring in Ralf Rangnick, it doesn't work out. Personality is like oil and water. So that didn't help Marcus, I think, in terms of his own personal form. I think now he's got a coach that believes in him and he believes in the coach. And you're seeing a different player. Played a fair chunk this season as the 9. Still think he's better coming off the left. But then there's a problem with that. Why? Because you want to play Jadon Sancho on the left. Sancho probably gives you more creativity there. He probably is more of an assister from that part of the park. But Rashford can give you straight line speed through the channel. So you kind of look at these things, progressive passes, things that we say he's not good at, right? So he's always saying, don't we? Oh, he's not good at passing the ball. Well, he's like in the top echelon of the Premier League in his position of playing progressive passes. And do you know what he's also good at? dribbling. So he does those two things that every wide player you want to do, and he does it better than absolutely everyone else in England. So this is the thing when we talk about Marcus Rashford, and I absolutely know that people have weird opinions about stuff, whether it be about Marcus feeding the poor and all of this stuff, or Marcus being a charity person, and Marcus, talking to government and all that stuff, and fans getting kind of weirded out and put off by that. I mean, the truth is the metrics say it all loud and clear. The truth is there for you to see. If you cannot see it yourself on a football pitch, and I know some fans don't, the metrics tell you that Marcus Rashford is doing it. He's doing it with a bit of swagger. He got his 100th goal at 24 years old. Obviously, today is his birthday. Happy 25th birthday, Marcus. Overall, Marcus Rashford's a huge part of this team now in this squad. And I think it was, I'm trying to think, it was said after the game, I think it was Luke Shaw as well and a couple of others. They all said, David De Gea said it. David De Gea said, Marcus Rashford. He went, Marcus Rashford could be one of the best players in the world. I really believe that. He's got everything. I watch him every day. He's got everything. So for us, it's just about Marcus maybe being more clinical at times, putting the ball in the net. But these stats tell you that is exactly what he is doing. So again, long may it continue. This is our 946 minutes of Premier League football. Let's see what this is like, Haider, after 2,000 minutes. Let's see what this is like after a World Cup. And hopefully Marcus can keep his fitness and his form. Let's
bring up Ronaldo, Rob, because I think, we have to compare the two. We've seen Ronaldo start games at number 9 and Marcus go on to the left. Before we go into Ronaldo and drill into some of the figures, do you think that, and I've been thinking about this, because Sancho has been so poor, if Sancho was playing at his capacity and potential, Ronaldo probably would be playing less games, wouldn't he? Like Marcus would be playing as a number 9.
Look, if Sancho and Martial were both fit and on form, then Ronaldo's played a lot more minutes than I expected him to. Like he's had a run of games, hasn't he? Really, he's been in the team consistently since he came back from his a period of not being at pre-season, and obviously the issues that he's had this year. But he's played a lot of minutes, hasn't he? So I think when you kind of look at it, he's got a body of work now. Like this is like based on this is 2,000 minutes of everything, yeah. And trying to look at his game, he can do these things for you. Like we're going to show that. As I said, green doesn't always mean good and red doesn't always mean bad. But I think with Cristiano, the lack of that movement up top is the killer here. And as you highlighted before, Haider, before we went live, his heat map is just such a mess. It's such a mess for a number 9. He's just literally going wherever he wants. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's drill into some of those bars. The green bars that look good but aren't particularly good. So I think the non-penalty XG. So that suggests that he's getting a lot of chances, right? And you can see that as well. You're getting the shots total. He's in the 99th percentile. He's almost having 4 shots per game. But we've seen, over the last 2 or 3 games at least. We've seen it before, but last 2 or 3 games, he's up to speed now. People are saying, "Oh, he hasn't had a preseason, all this, and this." He's up to speed now. I think he's played enough minutes to be able to judge him properly and not say match fitness is a problem. But against West Ham, I honestly didn't feel at any stage he was going to score with those chances. So it puts to bed that, Ronaldo would have scored that when Marcus missed a couple of chances against Chelsea. So that's a concern because you have Cristiano Ronaldo. Look, in a 1-1 situation, if there's one person in the squad I want to take that opportunity, it'll be Ronaldo because he's still probably the best finisher at the club. But the issue is that he's not doing those things that he was so good at. So before, we talk about the penalty box number 9, let's say, for example. We knew that when he came, that if he had a chance in the box, he'd score. But he's not doing that now. So what's the benefit of having him in the team? There doesn't seem to be a lot.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because this is the thing, is that he's living on legend. That's what it is. And, we debated before, didn't we? We were saying about, is this last season thing? Because we were looking at the metrics and kind of going, it's a little bit weird, wasn't it? At the bottom there, it's saying that it's statistically going up back to 2021. So I didn't notice that either, but this is SofaScore for this season. So it's like it's all mixed in with those numbers of 2,400 minutes. He's obviously not played 2,400 minutes this year, is he? But when you look at him, he will score goals if you get the ball to him in a certain part of the box. That's what he does, isn't it? He loves that. You get the ball to him and he's got space, he'll probably nail the target. Cristiano will be doing that till he's 45 years old. He will always nail the target. But if you're playing now with a manager that wants to press, You look at the bottom half here, we're looking at the off the ball metrics, essentially tackles, interceptions, and blocks. He is a ghost, in those moments. And it felt like that against West Ham. I don't know what you felt, Haider, but it just again felt that when West Ham wanted to play out from the back, they just could, because there was no bother from a number 9. No number 9 was really kind of doing any of that work. I can't believe he played 90 minutes against West Ham. I was shocked. I was really like, you need to be able to change this. And I think, say that game, you'd lost it 2-1. We would have been doing a different show today. I'd have been saying, right, why did Ten Hag leave Ronaldo on the pitch for 90 minutes when that pressing was a big mess, later on in the game? You just need someone that runs it, doesn't it? Someone that actually does that work. Yes, Cristiano will always be a great goal scorer, but he's not really putting the ball in the net this season. He's struggling with that. And off the ball is like his interceptions and blocks. He just simply cannot press. Can't do it at 37. He's never, ever been able to do it. Even when he was 25, he wasn't really good at that part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on when you say living on legend, and this is what people can't see. I don't want to go into it again, but like my last point on it is that what we're seeing on the pitch, you can appreciate the legend, the legacy, what we've seen from Cristiano Ronaldo is things we've maybe never seen on the football pitch. You don't score 700 goals if you're not an incredibly gifted footballer.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, you wouldn't you? Sir Alex did put up with the things that he didn't do because of the fact that he was so good at the other things that players couldn't do. But when he doesn't offer that, you can't have him in the pitch, and it's detrimental to the team. And we're seeing that week in, week out. Look, United won the game, but ultimately at the end of the day, when everyone's fit, he's third choice striker for me, and that's the way it has to be. So.
Yeah.
I think Ten Hag knows that as well. I think United need to find a solution to Ronaldo as well. But ultimately, he has to understand. I think it's very funny because obviously he blanked Gary Neville now, didn't he? This is just a child. It's just this is my favorite player growing up, almost of all time. With David Beckham, and it's just childish. Like
it's pathetic, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's pathetic, and and he's uber aware that his actions and everything he does because of who he is taken notice of, and I think. You heard a lot about this, I think, at the back end of Real Madrid. You heard a lot about this in Juventus, about how he would play on a lot of this stuff. And people kind of say, well, I don't really like that. We're not into it. Well, we knew Cristiano before he went to Real Madrid, and he wasn't really like this. But he's worse now than he's ever been. Do you know what I mean? You just said there about how Sir Alex used to protect him. I think when they played a 4-4-2, and he would be coming off the left-hand side, is that the 3 would shift across in midfield and look after. That's all they did. It wasn't a big tactical change. It allowed United to look after Ronaldo. You can't do that in the modern game. You can't have your number 9 basically checking out the game. And that's really what it felt like against West Ham. There were so many times you dropped deep, and then just times where the ball would go past him and he would be like, well, I don't need to do anything here, do I? I just wait for it to come back to me at some point. Oh, no, look, they've had a shot and De Gea saved it again. So it doesn't help you enough, Haider. And again, like, we're not going to go mad on Cristiano. It is what it is. He will leave the football club at some point, and there's no the manager totally knows what Cristiano is, what he can give you, but more importantly, what he is not giving you.
Just props to Ten Hag for the way he's managed the whole situation. I think
Brilliant.
He's fantastic. He's
Brilliant.
That was my biggest concern when he came in. He has managed big egos. Can he do it?
Yeah.
Oh, he can do it. If you can manage Cristiano Ronaldo, you can manage anybody in the world. Last point I want to make is that I saw someone say this regarding Zlatan. Like, Zlatan has adapted his game, didn't he? He knew that he'd lost a little bit of pace, so he played on the last man when he's at United. He didn't really drop deep as much. Ronaldo just did that. It just benefited the side. So I think that was an interesting comparison that we've seen. And I think Zlatan's got an ego as big as Jupiter, but I do think that Zlatan is actually all about the team as well. You hear all the stories about, even at Milan, they won the title last season, haven't won it for years, and the way that he, sort of brought Leao and all these other players under his wing. And he's the ultimate player that you want in that dressing room to guide the young players. I just don't really see that with Cristiano as well. So, I thought he'd come in and maybe he'd do that with the young players, but it seems that almost his petulance because he's not playing, it's just such a bad example. So that's the most disappointing thing for me, because age catches everyone, right? Like, there's not even Ronaldo. He's 38 years old. No other 38-year-old could be doing what he's doing. So he's actually doing something, I think, that most players, Wayne Rooney hit, didn't look after himself. We know that, but hit 30 and he was in decline. So the fact he's even playing in Man United, leading the line, is an incredible achievement. We know that he's got such high standards for himself, but he's almost in denial of what's happening. And that's, he looks like a child, I think. And you got a lot of young players like Garnacho playing with their idol. And I just don't think it's a good look, personally.
It's not a good look, and it's something that we could do without. Let's be honest, and I don't think Cristiano, if he was scoring the goals and is in incredible form and proving everyone wrong, fair enough. I'd be all right with it. I'd go, oh, well, he's not the long-term option, but he's scoring your goals, so you get on with it and you live with it and you're happy that you're winning games because of it. But overall, I think he's a problem at the football club. That he adds a dysfunctional element to the squad and to the attack that you could just do without. No one else would get away with it. And that's the problem that I have with it, is that there's no one else in the squad that you would kind of go, oh, yeah, like we just said, Rashford. Rashford gets tons of stick just for being Marcus Rashford, doesn't he? That's just the truth, just how it goes. Cristiano Ronaldo is the opposite. Gets loads of kudos just because he's Cristiano Ronaldo, but he's not really helping Man United's attack. And if United want to press in the weeks ahead, we've all got to pray that Anthony Martial gets fit as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Rob, the final segment of the show, we will talk about Bruno Fernandes.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to let you take this because I didn't actually notice this in the game actually until I saw a video on Twitter from someone sitting in the stadium. So I think it was a bit more obvious when you're sitting in the stadium. So just talk to listeners about what you saw. Final whistle, De Gea saving Man United. Everyone really, really happy. What was Bruno Fernandes doing in that instance?
I'm starting to have a problem with Bruno Fernandes. Like when I'm in the stadium and as a fan, I'm like everyone else. I sing and shout and scream and cry and enjoy the moment. That's what we're there for. That's why we do it. At the end of the game, the first person we all thought about when final whistle went was obviously David De Gea. And everyone kind of looked at David De Gea and everyone was singing his name and clapping towards him. You saw the players go and jump on him and you saw De Gea kind of giving it the kind of pumping moment like this. And I just kind of looked in front of me because I'm on this side of the Stretford end on the north stand. And Bruno was just on the kind of halfway line, just walking back to the tunnel with his head down like this. And it was odd. Like, as we're all celebrating and screaming and shouting, like, because we've just won a game of football. The players are all screaming and shouting and they're all over each other and because they've just won a game of football. And Bruno Fernandes, like a diva, is walking down towards the tunnel, not looking at the crowd, not clapping anyone. Stretford end's right in front of him. He could have, given it the old head down, walking off. Bruno Fernandes is the de facto captain of the football club when Harry Maguire's not around. Obviously, Harry wears the armband when he plays. Bruno Fernandes is not a leader. So Bruno Fernandes came to Man United with this big reputation of being a really good captain, didn't he, at Sporting? It was like, he wears his heart on his sleeve. And he does, doesn't he? We know he does. But there are parts of his game that are becoming a problem. I think playing with Ronaldo for him is a huge problem because when Ronaldo checks out, he's then forced to take the space up in front. That's a big issue for him. It means he's doing extra work. It'd be easier for him to kind of just sit deeper and play with the ball. But in that last 15, 20 minutes, we saw it in the game that when he went to the right-hand side, he was clearly perturbed, talking to himself, throwing his arms up in the air. We were again all a bit like, what's wrong with him? Why is he having a go at himself? You're in the middle of a game of football here. He clearly didn't like that the manager asked him to play on the right-hand side of that.
Two times now he's asked him to do that. He did it against Chelsea as well.
And you do it because tactically it's the right thing to do. So you haven't got any Anthony. You take a Langer off. The best player on that side probably would be Bruno. You want to keep it narrow. You want ball players on the pitch. You keep Bruno there. Otherwise, Haider, what do? You bring Bruno off. So Bruno would rather stay on the football pitch and get on with your job, mate. So I think in that last 10 or 15 minutes, there was one play right towards the end. He did get booked late, and that means he's now suspended for the Aston Villa game. And I think when you kind of looked at what he was doing on the ball with 5-10 minutes to go, it's just so bad. Like there was one bit where we were counter-attacking and there was like players streaming down the outside. He was in the middle. Ronaldo's up top. You got Rashford running off there. And I think you had McTominay running off. And it was too easy. Just play one of them in. And he just kind of lobbed the ball to the right and chased after it. And you were like, what are you doing? And you saw the crowd reacted quite angrily towards him because everyone was tense. So I don't know if that affected him because then a few minutes later, the whistle's gone and he's walking off the pitch really moody. But I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem. He's one of your senior players. He's one of your best players and you need him to be good consistently. And he's so hit or miss. He's just not good quite a lot, quite often. The consistency isn't there, and we need to see a more consistent Bruno Fernandes. But more than that, Haider, I want to see less of the vitriol now. I want to see less of the rolling around and hands in the air. I don't normally mind all that stuff. I'm all right with it. It's something that.
But is that just Bruno? It's like with Rooney.
Some players are like that. Yeah, it's not.
You
It's
know.
not a problem. I don't like. Again, a lot of people go, "Oh, we don't do that in English football." Yes, you do. I've seen it for years. England players roll around just as much as everyone else. It's nothing to do with nationality or any of that kind of jingoism that you hear about all the time. But Bruno Fernandes likes to have a moan. He likes the sound of his own voice, and he's quite selfish. And I would like to see Bruno Fernandes be more of a team player, more of a leader, and more helpful towards the cause. I'm not having a player walk off in front of us like that, and when we've won the game, and just be all about himself. And I had a bit of a go at him. I'm not scared to say it. I don't normally do. I very rarely shout at a player, but I had a bit of a scream at him and told him what's what and a few choice words. Because what are you doing? We're all here together. We're supposed to be Manchester United. And you do that all the time in your interviews, Bruno, all the time. I'm Manchester United. I love the club. It's in my heart. And all. Just won a game of football, a really hard, tough game of football. And you can't even be bothered to look at anyone. Head down, just a diva. More of a diva than Mariah Carey. So that's Bruno Fernandes in a nutshell. And I think we need more of the Bruno Fernandes that we knew in his first kind of 8 to 18 months at the football club. I think for him, he's compromised by Ronaldo, Haider. I think that's the truth.
I was about to say, my sort of rebuttal to that is that.
Yeah.
He looks more frustrated when he plays Ronaldo because they don't work.
Massively.
Ronaldo obviously drops into that space. He's got to do more. I honestly think this is how I see Bruno Fernandes. By the way, I agree with pretty much everything you're saying. It's we complain about Ronaldo walking off the pitch like he did. I know that it was during the game, but Bruno's just done something similar in my opinion.
Yeah.
So he should have the same spotlight on him, and there is no spotlight on him. Basically, he's not Cristiano Ronaldo. I think every time Ronaldo plays, when they play together, he gets frustrated. I've seen it in Portugal as well. Ronaldo, actually, Bruno sits on the bench a lot of the time now because they don't work together.
No.
United are a much better side when Ronaldo doesn't play and when Bruno Fernandes is playing well. So I understand that as a player, that when it's not quite working for you, he's obviously one of those players that wants to get on the score sheet. He wants to impact games. We see that, we know what his qualities are. But I do feel like when he doesn't impact games, that's when the selfishness comes in. And I think sometimes he forgets about the team and then focuses just on his performance. The other thing I want to add as well is him shifting out to that right-hand side. Like, if the manager asks you to do something, you've got to do it. So he's twice now that he has complained about that. But I do also feel when he gets shifted out, Rob, United lose control of the game. It happened against Chelsea, where he moved to the right-hand side, and United's, in my opinion, United's threat did go with him. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what Ten Hag actually does, because Bruno is out. Does Eriksen move into that number 10 position? Van der Beek's now back from injury. Does he play? Like, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens, what Ten Hag's thinking is. Does Fred and McTominay come in with Casemiro, or does McTominay go and play as the most advanced player? It's going to be interesting. See, I actually think he should give Jadon Sancho a go at number 10. A lot of people are calling for it. I just want to see what Jadon Sancho can do personally. He's very creative. He's good on the ball. My final point, actually, Rob, before I let you jump in, is that when it comes to captaincy, Bruno is a de facto captain. Next season, it has to be Lisandro Martinez, in my opinion.
Yeah, because he's the popular one and we all love him. So we would love that, wouldn't we? So,
he's a leader, Rob. Is he not a leader?
He's a leader, totally. He is.
Him or Casemiro?
He's a heart and soul. I think the captaincy thing is up for debate. It's one for another day, because we've got to see how the season pans out more than anything, haven't we? Again, captaincy gets talked about more in England as something serious than it does in other parts of the world. It's just the truth. I just think with Bruno, I don't know. Like you just said there about that United lose control of the game and all of that. And I agree with that. I think the issue is on Bruno. So we talk a lot about Fred McTominay giving the ball away for 5 yards. Bruno Fernandes is the worst player in the midfield at it. He's the worst. And he shouldn't be. He just needs to be calm and keep the ball and do what Eriksen does. Eriksen just glides around the football pitch and goes, well, now I'm a number 8 and now I'm a number 6. And now I've got to run back and look after this. And now I can get forward. Now I can play the killer pass. And it all makes sense, doesn't it? His game is like fluent. Whereas you look at Bruno and it's fragmented. It's the opposite. Bruno is just like, I think when Ronaldo's on the pitch, you see that Bruno starts trying to play Hollywood passes and you're like, Don't do that. There's no need to do it. Just pass it sideways if you have to, or go backwards. Don't give the ball away. And you saw that in that moment there, was that he gets compromised because he wants to find Ronaldo. Ronaldo is his hero. Ronaldo is his icon. And he's talked about it before, about playing with Ronaldo at Man United is like his dream. It's like when he was a kid. He remembers watching Man United with Ronaldo, and now he's there doing it, living the dream. But that is not the dream. The dream is winning football matches. So you got to help us win football matches. And like you just said, Dave, if you're told to go and play on the right-hand side, you go and do it with a big smile on your face. Go and do the job. Yeah, the manager tells you to play on the right and you can play on the right, you go and play on the right. It's not like he's been asked to play fullback or centre-back. It's a position you can play. And it should work. Like Bruno can play that wide area. In the slide I put up there, I showed that his job on the right is to come in with the ball. He doesn't have to hold the width. He's not Anthony. So let's see with Bruno Fernandes. But there's too many things like that, Haider. You talk about toxicity in the dressing room. Someone would have seen that. Players would have seen that, yeah? The players would have gone home and someone would have seen that Bruno's just walking off with his head down. I guarantee you someone was in his ear at Carrington today or tomorrow. They'd have been like, what did you do that for?
Ten Hag would have been.
Rob. Of course he would have done. The manager would have been in his ear. So that's good because I feel good about that. I'm not quite sure.
Standards have to be up here.
The standards have to be up there, and he's now suspended for a game. Like you saying there, just to address what you said about Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho, in his whole career, in the expat games that he's played in Germany and England, has never, ever played as number 10. So if we played him as number 10, it would be totally on vibes and fumes. We don't know anything. We don't know what he'd look like there. So I think when you're trying to win games, as we are, and we're trying to be in the top 4, I don't know if you can do it yet, Haider. I don't think you can sacrifice that when you've got a number 10 as good as Christian Eriksen, who's one of the best in the world at being in that number 10 position. But Marcus Rashford played as a 10 a few games ago, didn't he? 2-3 games ago, and looked really good behind Ronaldo because he just gives you pace from the 10. The stats tell you again, he actually makes the creative passes from there as well. So that's a bit weird, isn't it? Jadon Sancho is out of form. Jadon Sancho needs to go back to the training ground and practice and start doing some of the good stuff that he was doing before, Haider. I don't think we can drop him in there. I'd rather Donny van de Beek as a number 10, a kind of ready-made number 10 who can do all that stuff, fits the system, rather than crowbarring talent in. We've done it for too long, Haider, pushing talent in and going, well, he's the best player. No, the best player is the one that helps you win the football match.
And Rob, that is a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all your fantastic comments, and make sure you give it a like, hit the subscribe button, give us a follow on Twitter as well at ManUnitedMC. Give me a follow at Haider_Rubbani. Give Rob a follow at _Rob_B. Rob, what's your final word before we go? Just briefly, because it's positive, and I'm feeling positive about United again.
Yep, 1 goal conceded in 6 games. You look like a functioning football team now, and you look like you've got a heart. And that's good. They're the things that I think Man United have been missing for a long time. So we can nitpick about Bruno and Ronaldo and talk about their attitudes. The way I look at it is this, is that if they don't want to come along for the journey, bye. I don't care who you are. You could be an icon. You could be a legend. You could be the captain of the club. If you're not in it with us to win it, then you can go. I feel really good about Man United, and I have done for weeks, even when we've lost games and things haven't gone our way. I just feel that this manager has got what we need to take this club forward. And I think Ten Hag sees the challenge here. I think he feels good about it. You still got to go into transfer window in January. You still got to go into transfer window next summer. Those windows are going to be really important now about whether you can push the club forward. Arsenal are the blueprint. A year ago, bottom of the league. Now top of the league. Man United should be looking at that, having a sniff and going, we couldn't do that. We can actually get to that position where we're going to take on City and Liverpool and push forward quickly and find a side of play. We have an identity now, Haider. Now it's about expanding that.
Exciting times to be a United fan. As Pep Guardiola said, United are coming. We'll see you all next time.